All right, continuing down the effects menu, we have reverb up next. And reverb is just what it says. It's a good effect within SoundForge to apply some basic and simple reverb effects to your audio. Let's look. All right, we've got some of our generic VO open here. Okay, here's some sample. And let's go up to the effects menu and down to reverb. And what we notice first is we have our reverberation mode. We have choices here of basically pretty self-explanatory stuff, wide open hall, concert hall, deep hall, warm space, cavernous space, live ambience, warm ambience, reverb plates, metal tanks, etc., etc. So you have a lot of reverberation modes. And then you have all the control over the reverberation itself. Okay, here's some sample VO that I'm using just to illustrate some of the various effects. The reverb out is obviously how much. Okay, here's some sample VO that I'm using just to illustrate is being applied. The dry out is how much of your actual audio you're mixing in there with it. Sample VO that I'm using. You have what's called early reflection style. This mode here basically is being measured in milliseconds, and it has different modes. But basically, this is what its early reflection type is talking about. If you're imagining the environment that you're setting up for this reverb, it's what initially happens with the sound that bounces off of, let's say, a wall or a tile wall in a bathroom or something like that. Depending on the size of the room, you're going to want to make this, shorter for smaller rooms and much larger for larger rooms, as well as you can pan it left or right for some interesting effects as well too. Okay, here's some sample VO that I'm using just to illustrate some of the various cool effects. Early out determines how much of that early reflection style is mixed into the reverb. And then we've got the basic decay time. Okay, here's some sample VO that I'm using just to illustrate some of the various cool. The longer the decay time, the more pronounced the reverb sound. And then this is also the pre-delay is basically what it's determining is that it's determining the time between when your audio is first heard and when the reverb effect occurs. Okay, here's some sample VO that I'm using just to illustrate some of the various cool effects within Sound4J. And then you've also got, you can attenuate some bass frequencies, that I'm using just to illustrate some and you can attenuate some high frequencies. So you can get some different effects by sliding those around. What I also typically use here is I like a lot of the presets. They give you some really good ones, Bright Hall, Cathedral, It just depends on, again, what kind of environment you want to simulate for what you're doing. Long haul. Okay, here's some sample VO that I'm using. This is one I use on a regular basis. Cool effects within Sound4J. Okay, here's some sample VO. Definitely sounds like you're inside of a 50-gallon trash bag. Effects within Sound4J. Here's a plate reverb. Okay, here's some sample VO that I'm using just to illustrate some of the various cool effects within Sound4J. Got to watch it there because you're getting too much kind of reverb and reflection there off of the audio. You pick up some artifacts. Okay, here's some sample VO that I'm using just to illustrate. This one, actually, the small hall, I use quite often. It's a really subtle but very nice preset. I'm using just to illustrate some of the various cool effects within Sound4J. So you have a lot of control, and it's your basic reverb functions. You can definitely fine-tune it a lot with what you've got in here, and the presets are really solid.